Hello everyone. Last fall we went on a trip and I did this thing that I called postcards from the road. Every day, pretty much, not necessarily every day, but close to every day, I sent my mom a postcard of what we were doing. Now, it had been my intention to purchase postcards from the places we went and the things we saw and did. Well, that didn't happen. I ended up having to make my postcards from brochures and maps and things like that, which was actually more fun and more original to me. It was more about our trip than anything else. I also collect pressed pennies, and these are the pennies from my trip. This is a coin I got when Jeff was at Santa School, and a little charm that we got in Gatlinburg as a remembrance. Anyways, I just now finished the binding and the front cover and everything of the book, so I wanted to do a little flip. Also, I will make sure down in the box below is a video of a link to a video of my making one of these postcards. So I'm just gonna do a flip. I made this piece after I got home, and therefore it wasn't mailed. I didn't know what I was gonna do for the cover, and this is just what I did. This is a postcard I actually had with me because the very first day we just drove to a place, to our starting destination, which was Red Bay, Alabama, to have some work done on the camper. And this was one of the days we were in Red Bay. I guess I'm going to need two of these. Mom's address is on all of these postcards, so I can't, it's harder to flip. So this is when we were in Red Bay doing our chores and things. And needless to say, we were there for several days. Red Bay, Alabama is where they make Tiffin motorhomes. So, and it's northwest Alabama. One of the days they had a little sort of local celebration, and their little museum was open, and so we went down to the museum that day and really enjoyed ourselves. It was a traveling exhibit at the museum, and it was very interesting. And see, we were there several days, so there's several days with Alabama on it. Then the next couple of days we were traveling, and we traveled north across Kentucky, and we didn't do much other than travel. So I picked up brochures at the interstate tourism things, and that's just our Kentucky day. Sometimes when we were traveling, the best thing we saw was the campground, and we enjoyed the campgrounds we were in. This is actually the spot we stayed in that campground. And this was, I think, in Indiana, traveling across Indiana. And these postcards were mailed, so even though I made them and coated them, say, with Mod Podge or something, sometimes they were coated, sometimes they weren't, depended on the day. And they were mailed, so they took some abuse in the mail, and yet they still were a lot of fun. When we got to Michigan, we visited my cousin, and they live in Grand Haven, and we went downtown, and they were having what's called an art walk. So we got to see several of the artists' exhibitions. And then in a day or so, we went from Grand Haven, Michigan to Midland, Michigan, where Jeffrey was going to go to Santa Claus school. And these are actually real leaves underneath the Mod Podge. I picked them up and Mod Podged them down that night. They were a little dry by the time I Mod Podged them down, but the leaves were beautiful. And we were going to go, Jeff's going to go to Santa Claus school. That's why we were in Midland, Michigan. And they have a small museum there. And the first day we got there, we went to check because the Santa Claus school was at the museum. And the girl offered to let us view the museum. And in the children's area, they had these texture plates. And so I made a Santa Claus reindeer card. The next day, Santa Claus school wasn't ready to start, so we went to Pinconning, which is kind of across the state of Michigan, near the water. Midland is right there, and Pinconning is over here near the water. And they're known for their cheese, so we stopped and got cheese snacks for our lunch. And then Jeff was in Santa Claus school for several days, and Midland has a little Santa Claus house downtown, and this is a card from that. Now, that was just a brochure that I cut, and it was this exactly the way it was on the brochure. Now, you can't see, but these brochures, when I actually cut them up and layered them back together a lot of times. This is from Bonner's. The Santa Claus school took a field trip to Bonner's and to the Bavarian Inn, which is the next card, and that's where we had dinner. Now, what's really interesting is this is in Frankenmuth, Michigan, and we had our rehearsal dinner in Frankenmuth at this restaurant 35 years roughly before we went to Santa Claus school. So it was real fun to remember. And like I said, some days I was able to purchase a few cards. This one was a purchased card. The colors in Michigan were beautiful. After we left Santa Claus school, we were headed to New York and my sisters, and we spent a night on the Ohio Turnpike, parked between some trucks. A few of the turnpikes actually have campgrounds, but it meant unhooking our tow car, and they were small. It just was easier for us to park over where the trucks were. And we played dominoes that night. Had fun, you know. We were just parked for the night just to get off the road. We stopped early the next day and we went to the Elk Country Visitor Center. The elk finally came out. It was too dark to even hardly see them, but this is the drive up to the visitor center. And we were just on the interstate in a campground off there. So this was in Pennsylvania. The next day we were headed into my sister's and we got into New York. Well, I drew this. This is not a very great drawing, but it was a very frustrating day. We were trying to get off, we were getting off the interstate right at the Pennsylvania-New York border, and the little town we were trying to get through, we could not get the motorhome through it. There was 3 different ways we tried, and each way had super low clearance areas that we could not go through, which was really frustrating. And then I don't know that this was the very next day. You know, every once in a while I did miss a day sending a card, but my sister had to go to work, and so Jeff and I went off exploring, and we went to Woodstock and had lunch. We have been to Woodstock before. We didn't do a lot of checking out there. We had other places that we went and explored. And then we went to the we went on another exploring trip. Like I said, my sister had to work several days while we were there, so she gave us different places that was interesting to go, and we did. And one day we stopped at this Phonica diner. It's exceptionally well known. We didn't think their food was all that great. It was very busy. And this postcard and the next one actually came from the diner. As you can see, that next day wasn't all that exciting as far as what we were doing. And I just used the other card from the diner. Then my sister was home and the next day, and we went for a long hike up in the woods, and then went to the Egg's Nest for lunch. And then another day with her, we had to go into Rhinebeck, and we just did some wandering around in Rhinebeck. And there again, this is brochures, different brochures that I cut up. Rhinebeck is known for a sheep and wool festival, so. And then we had to travel back through Pennsylvania, and we actually came down this 81. We were driving on that expressway, and this is the RV park we stopped in that night. A lot of times I use the campground brochures just to kind of remind myself where we had been. And the next day we did a lot of driving through Virginia. We were headed to a camper rally in Virginia, and so we drove. This is the section of highway we drove in Virginia, it was in Virginia, Highway 81. We spent a lot of time on that interstate. Oops, I'm starting to push that off. I'm sorry. We got into Lewisburg, which is where our rally was, and we were there early enough that we got parked, and we went into town just to see what was around. And we went to the beef jerky outlet and bought snacks, and we wandered around in the little town. And because we were there a couple of days early for the rally, we got to hike some trails. They have a really nice trail that's... This Greenbrier River Trail is actually on an old railroad bed, so it was a nice pleasant walk. We just walked up and back. We did not hike the whole thing. The day after that was something really phenomenal. We went to the bridge jump, which is they actually jump off this bridge that is on the New River Gorge, and they've been doing it for 40 years now, and we got to walk out on the bridge and watch them jump off. It was pretty interesting. And then we were at our camper rally, so for several days, we will be in the same place, and the Greenbrier Valley, West Virginia is where we were at, and it was beautiful. The colors, the whole trip were gorgeous. Our rally every night had dinner events. One night we played bingo, and they honored the veterans. And this is a Tiffin Motor Coach rally. So, and you see that I used the brochure for a couple of things for that particular day. Oops. It just so happened I attended a lecture while we were at the rally for Adventure Caravan Tours, and this coupon won me a gift certificate to part of one of their tours. We actually have not taken that tour yet, but it is something we're thinking about doing. And this was the last night's dinner buffet, and it was a Jimmy Buffett entertainment kind of thing, and they had flower lays, and I actually put the flowers on the postcard, and it's quite textured to have mailed as a postcard, and it worked just fine. One day we went off exploring, but when we got back, some neighbors asked if we wanted to go to dinner, and so that's what we did. We went out to pizza dinner, and this checkered stuff is what they line their pizza boxes with. So, you know, my postcards are very definitely memories. We went off driving another day. We stayed there a few days after, and did other things. We went and drove up and found some covered bridges. We came across one this day just by accident, and the next day we went to one on purpose. Our next day of travel ended in Bristol, Tennessee at the Bass Pro Shop, which the Bass Pro Shops allow you to park overnight in their parking lots. So, and since, you know, we were just traveling through and not going to really see anything, we stopped and had our dinner at Bass Pro Shop. And then we got into Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. And it was a decision at the last minute to kind of stop there and spend a few days before we went on home. We actually honeymooned in Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. So we really enjoyed the fact that we were on having our 35th anniversary and getting to see the same place. It definitely was very different. We spent 4 hours in a traffic jam at Cades Cove. And this is the campground we stayed in, the Riverbend Campground. It's actually in Pigeon Forge, and was a very nice campground. We just stayed in one, the first one we come up that had space for us. We hadn't planned this part of the trip, so it was a good thing that we could actually find a place, because it was fall and now it had gotten quite chilly and the leaves were starting to pass and it was quite rainy. So, but the campgrounds were pretty crowded. So we saw more elk in the park than we actually saw when we went to the elk preserve. And our last day there, we had a very good time and drove over the mountain to the North Carolina side and saw a whole field of elk and actually got to sit and watch them. And that was the end of our trip, and that is the end of my little flip through. But I had promised to flip through when I got home and was talking about this, and I just hadn't gotten it done. I love my little press pennies on it, and I'm going to read you a quote from our 1001 Ways to Creativity and probably go have some other things to do today. Regular breaks will help you to stay fresh and focused. Well, I'm getting ready to take a break. So you guys go, have fun, make some art. Bye-bye.